The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of the Spencer family estate, casting delicate shadows across Charlotte's bedroom floor. She sat at her antique vanity, carefully fastening the silver locket around her neck. The piece had been her grandmother's most treasured possession, passed down through 3 generations of Spencer women. Its intricate engravings caught the light, revealing tiny roses and vines that seemed to dance across its surface. Charlotte's fingers traced the familiar pattern as she remembered her grandmother's words from years ago. "This locket holds more than just a photograph, my dear. It carries the love and strength of every woman who wore it before you." Inside the delicate silver heart lay a faded photograph of her great-grandmother, a woman she had never met but felt deeply connected to through the stories passed down in her family. The Spencer estate buzzed with activity that morning. Charlotte's stepmother had arrived 3 days earlier with her own daughter, Kate, following her recent marriage to Charlotte's father. The adjustment had been difficult for everyone, but Charlotte tried her best to welcome her new family members. She understood that her father needed companionship after years of loneliness following her mother's passing. Appeared to be everything Charlotte's mother had not been. Where Charlotte's mother had been gentle and soft-spoken, commanded attention with her bold personality and expensive tastes. She wore designer clothes and jewelry that sparkled under every light, and she had opinions about everything from the estate's decoration to how the household should be managed. Charlotte made her way downstairs to the breakfast room, where the family gathered each morning. The room overlooked the estate's magnificent gardens, where roses climbed ancient stone walls and fountains created a peaceful symphony. Her father sat at the head of the long mahogany table, reading his morning newspaper while sipping coffee from his favorite china cup. "Good morning, Father," Charlotte said, placing a gentle kiss on his cheek before taking her usual seat near the window. "Good morning, my dear. You look lovely today," he replied, glancing up from his paper with a warm smile. "That locket suits you perfectly." Entered the room moments later, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She wore a burgundy silk robe that flowed behind her like a royal cape, and her dark hair was perfectly styled despite the early hour. Kate followed close behind, still appearing somewhat uncomfortable in the grandeur of her new home. "What a beautiful morning," announced, though her eyes immediately focused on Charlotte's necklace. "Charlotte, darling, is that a family piece?" Charlotte's hand instinctively moved to the locket. "Yes, it was my grandmother's. She gave it to me before she passed away." "How lovely," said, though something in her tone suggested more than casual interest. "May I see it?" Charlotte hesitated for a moment but didn't want to appear rude to her new stepmother. She carefully unclasped the necklace and handed it across the table. Eyes seemed to light up as she examined the piece, turning it over in her manicured hands to study every detail. "This is exquisite craftsmanship," murmured, opening the locket to reveal the tiny photograph inside. "Victorian era, I would guess. The silver work is exceptional, and these engravings are done by hand. This must be worth quite a considerable amount." Charlotte felt uncomfortable hearing her beloved family heirloom discussed in terms of monetary value. "It's not about the money," she said quietly. "It means everything to me because it connects me to my grandmother and my mother." Smile tightened slightly as she handed the locket back. "Of course, dear, family sentiments are priceless." The conversation moved to other topics, but Charlotte noticed that gaze kept returning to the locket throughout breakfast. Kate seemed oblivious to her mother's fixation, focusing instead on the elaborate meal the kitchen staff had prepared. The household cook had outdone herself with fresh pastries, seasonal fruits, and perfectly prepared eggs. After breakfast, Charlotte's father announced that he would be traveling to London on business for several days. "I trust you ladies will take good care of each other while I'm away," he said, gathering his papers and briefcase. "Don't worry about us," replied with a bright smile. "We'll have plenty of time to get better acquainted." Charlotte spent the afternoon in the estate's library, one of her favorite places in the entire house. The room contained thousands of books collected by generations of Spencer family members, and tall windows provided perfect reading light. She settled into a comfortable armchair with a novel, unconsciously touching her locket as she read. The peace of the afternoon was interrupted when Kate appeared in the library doorway. "Charlotte, my mother would like to speak with you in the drawing room." Charlotte marked her place in her book and made her way to the elegant drawing room, where waited near the fireplace. The room's antique furniture and family portraits created an atmosphere of old-world sophistication that seemed to appreciate. "Charlotte, dear, please sit down," said, gesturing to the sofa across from her chair. "I wanted to discuss something important with you." Charlotte took a seat, wondering what could be so urgent. Its expression had become more serious than usual, and her hands were folded tightly in her lap. "I've been thinking about our new family situation," began carefully. "Your father and I want to create harmony in this household, and that means making sure everyone feels valued and included." Charlotte nodded, unsure where the conversation was heading. "I noticed how much that locket means to you," continued. "It's clearly a precious family heirloom. However, I think it might be wise to consider keeping such valuable pieces in the family safe, especially when you're out and about. Jewelry theft is unfortunately common these days." Charlotte's heart sank. "I appreciate your concern, but I've worn this locket every day for years without any problems. It's perfectly safe with me." Smile became strained. "Of course, dear. I'm simply thinking of what's best for everyone. Perhaps we could compromise. You could wear it on special occasions, and otherwise it could be safely stored with the other family valuables." "This locket is the most important thing I own," Charlotte said firmly. "My grandmother specifically wanted me to wear it and keep it close to my heart. I can't just put it away in a safe." The tension in the room became palpable. Its expression hardened slightly, though she maintained her composed demeanor. "I see. Well, perhaps we can discuss this further when your father returns." Charlotte felt a chill run down her spine. Something about its tone suggested this conversation was far from over. She excused herself and returned to her room, where she carefully examined the locket in her jewelry box mirror. The piece seemed to glow with an inner warmth that reminded her of her grandmother's loving touch. That evening at dinner, the atmosphere felt different, was polite but distant, and Kate seemed to sense the tension without understanding its source. Charlotte tried to maintain normal conversation, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed in the household dynamics. Before retiring for the night, Charlotte stood at her bedroom window looking out over the moonlit gardens. The estate had always been her sanctuary, a place where she felt connected to her family's history and her mother's memory. The locket rested against her heart, its familiar weight providing comfort in an increasingly uncertain situation. She didn't notice the figure watching from the shadows near her door, or the calculating expression on its face as she observed Charlotte's nightly routine. Plans were already forming in its mind, plans that would change everything for the young woman who stood innocently at her window, treasuring the one thing that connected her to her beloved past. The next morning brought an unusual quietness to the Spencer estate. Charlotte woke later than usual, having spent a restless night troubled by strange dreams. She reached for her locket as she always did upon waking, but her fingers found only bare skin. Panic immediately flooded through her as she sat up in bed, searching frantically through her and pillows. "It has to be here somewhere," she whispered to herself, throwing back the covers and dropping to her hands and knees to search the floor around her bed. The carpet revealed nothing but dust particles dancing in the morning sunlight streaming through her windows. Charlotte's hands shook as she checked every surface in her room. She opened drawers, searched through her jewelry box, and even looked behind furniture. The locket was nowhere to be found. Her heart pounded as the reality of the situation began to sink in. The most precious thing she owned, the last tangible connection to her grandmother and mother, had vanished during the night. She tried to remain calm as she retraced her steps from the previous evening. She distinctly remembered wearing the locket to dinner and touching it while she stood at her bedroom window before sleep. The clasp had never been unreliable before, and she couldn't imagine how it could have simply fallen off without her noticing. After dressing hastily, Charlotte made her way downstairs to begin a systematic search of the entire house. She started in the drawing room where she had spoken with the previous afternoon, carefully examining every cushion, checking behind furniture, and even looking inside the fireplace. The morning staff watched her with curious expressions as she searched increasingly desperate areas. "Miss Charlotte, is everything all right?" asked Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper who had worked for the Spencer family for over 20 years. "I've lost my grandmother's locket," Charlotte explained, trying to keep her voice steady. "I must have dropped it somewhere yesterday evening." Mrs. Henderson's face immediately showed concern. She had known Charlotte since she was a small child and understood how much the locket meant to her. "Don't worry, dear. We'll find it. I'll have the entire staff help search every room in the house." Charlotte felt grateful for the support, but as the morning progressed and the search expanded throughout the estate, her hope began to fade. The kitchen staff searched the dining room thoroughly, the groundskeepers checked the garden paths Charlotte had walked the previous day, and even the stable hands searched the courtyard. Every inch of the house was examined, but the locket remained missing. Appeared around midday, dressed elegantly in a navy dress with matching jewelry. "Charlotte, darling, what's all this commotion about?" "My grandmother's locket is missing," Charlotte replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've searched everywhere, but I can't find it." His expression showed appropriate concern, though something in her eyes seemed different. "How terrible! When did you last see it?" "I was wearing it at dinner last night, and I touched it before I went to sleep. When I woke up this morning, it was gone." "Perhaps the clasp broke and it fell somewhere during the night," suggested. "Have you checked your bedroom thoroughly?" "It was the first place I searched. Mrs. Henderson and I went through every inch of that room." Moved closer and placed what seemed like a comforting hand on Charlotte's shoulder. "These old pieces of jewelry can be quite fragile. The clasp mechanism probably gave out after all these years of constant wear." Charlotte felt frustrated by the suggestion that her grandmother's locket was somehow defective. "The clasp was perfectly fine. I've never had any problems with it before." "Well, jewelry can be unpredictable," continued. "I'm sure it will turn up eventually. Perhaps it rolled under some heavy furniture where it's difficult to see." Kate joined them in the main hallway, carrying a book under her arm. "What's everyone looking for?" "Charlotte has misplaced her grandmother's locket," explained before Charlotte could respond. "The beautiful silver one you were wearing yesterday?" Kate asked. "I hope you find it. It looked like it meant a lot to you." "It does," Charlotte replied quietly. "It's the most important thing I own." As the day continued, Charlotte's search became more desperate. She retraced every step she had taken the previous day, examining every room she had entered, every chair she had sat in, and every surface she might have touched. The library, the conservatory, the morning room, the garden paths, nothing yielded any trace of the missing locket. The household staff continued to help despite their regular duties, but their expressions grew increasingly sympathetic as the hours passed. Mrs. Henderson privately spoke with Charlotte in the afternoon, expressing her own confusion about the disappearance. "In all my years working for this family, nothing has ever simply vanished like this," the housekeeper said quietly. "Your grandmother's jewelry was always kept safe, and you've been so careful with that locket." "I know I didn't lose it carelessly," Charlotte insisted. "Something else must have happened." Mrs. Henderson glanced around to ensure they were alone before speaking again. "Perhaps we should consider that someone might have taken it." The suggestion sent a chill through Charlotte. The idea that someone in her own home would steal her most treasured possession seemed impossible to accept. Who would do such a thing? Everyone in this household has been with our family for years. "Not everyone," Mrs. Henderson said carefully, though she didn't elaborate further. That evening at dinner, the atmosphere was subdued. Charlotte could barely eat, her thoughts consumed by the missing locket and the growing certainty that it would never be found. Made polite conversation about various topics, while Kate seemed genuinely sympathetic to Charlotte's distress. "Perhaps we should contact the local authorities," Kate suggested. "If someone broke into the house, they might be able to help." Quickly dismissed the idea. "There's no evidence of any break-in. The doors were all locked and nothing else is missing. It's much more likely that the locket simply fell somewhere and will eventually turn up." Charlotte looked up from her untouched plate. "But we've searched everywhere. If it had just fallen, someone would have found it by now." "These old houses have many hiding places," replied smoothly. "Secret compartments, loose floorboards, gaps behind wainscoting. The locket could be anywhere." After dinner, Charlotte returned to her room feeling defeated and emotionally drained. She sat on her bed, staring at the jewelry box where her grandmother's locket should have been resting. The empty space seemed to mock her, reminding her of everything she had lost. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting to see Mrs. Henderson or one of the maids. Instead, entered the room, closing the door quietly behind her. "Charlotte, dear, I wanted to speak with you privately." Charlotte looked up wearily. "If this is about the locket, I don't want to discuss it any more tonight." Moved to the chair near Charlotte's vanity and sat down gracefully. "Actually, I wanted to offer you something that might help ease your loss." She reached into her purse and a small velvet jewelry box. "I brought this from my own collection. It's a beautiful piece that I think would suit you perfectly." Charlotte opened the box to reveal an expensive-looking gold necklace with a diamond pendant. While objectively beautiful, it looked nothing like her grandmother's antique locket and held no sentimental value whatsoever. "It's lovely," Charlotte said diplomatically, "but I couldn't accept such an expensive gift." "Please, I insist," pressed. "I know it can't replace your grandmother's locket, but perhaps it could help you start new traditions instead of dwelling on the past." The suggestion that she should simply move on from her family heirloom made Charlotte's heart ache even more. "Thank you for the thought, but I'm not ready to wear anything else. I still hope my grandmother's locket will be found." Smile became slightly strained. "Of course, dear, the offer remains open if you change your mind." After left, Charlotte sat alone in her room, holding the diamond necklace and wondering why her stepmother seemed so eager to replace her missing locket. Something about the whole situation felt wrong, but she couldn't identify exactly what was bothering her beyond the obvious loss of her treasured possession. Meanwhile, in another part of the house, carefully locked her bedroom door and opened her own jewelry box. Hidden beneath layers of silk scarves and expensive necklaces lay a familiar silver locket, its intricate Victorian engravings catching the lamplight exactly as they had when Charlotte wore it the previous day. 3 days passed without any trace of Charlotte's missing locket, and the young woman's spirits sank lower with each unsuccessful search. She had stopped eating properly and spent most of her time wandering the estate grounds, hopping against hope that she might spot a glint of silver among the garden flowers or hidden in the stone corners of the old walls. The household staff continued to express sympathy, but their initial enthusiasm for helping had gradually faded as it became clear the locket was truly gone. Charlotte's father remained in London, unaware of the drama unfolding at his estate. She had considered telephoning him about the missing locket, but decided against worrying him with something that might resolve itself before his return. Besides, what could he do from so far away? Had become increasingly solicitous toward Charlotte, offering comfort and suggestions that always seemed to focus on moving forward rather than continuing to search. She frequently mentioned the diamond necklace she had offered, suggesting that wearing beautiful jewelry again might lift Charlotte's spirits and help her heal from the loss. "Dwelling on missing objects isn't healthy," observed during breakfast on the 4th day. "Sometimes life requires us to let go of the past and embrace new possibilities." Charlotte stirred her tea without drinking it, her appetite still absent. "That locket wasn't just an object to me. It was my connection to my grandmother and my mother. You can't understand what it meant." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Perhaps that kind of attachment to material possessions isn't as healthy as you believe. Your grandmother and mother wouldn't want you to be miserable over a piece of jewelry." The suggestion that her grief was somehow improper made Charlotte look up sharply. "They would understand because they felt the same way about family traditions and meaningful heirlooms. My grandmother specifically told me to keep the locket close and never let it go." "People say many things in emotional moments," replied coolly. "Practical wisdom sometimes requires making difficult choices." Kate had been quietly observing these exchanges with growing discomfort. Unlike her mother, she seemed genuinely sympathetic to Charlotte's distress and didn't understand why appeared so eager to discourage the search efforts. That afternoon, while was out visiting acquaintances in the village, Kate approached Charlotte in the library. "I wanted to talk to you about something," she said, glancing around to ensure they were alone. Charlotte looked up from the book she had been staring at without reading for the past hour. "What is it?" Kate sat down in the chair across from Charlotte, her expression troubled. "I've been thinking about your missing locket, and something doesn't seem right about the whole situation." "What do you mean?" "Well, you said you were wearing it at dinner and touched it before bed. The clasp had never given you problems before. How could it just disappear so completely that even the entire household staff can't find any trace of it?" Charlotte felt a flicker of hope that someone else shared her doubts about the official explanation. "I've been wondering the same thing. It doesn't make sense that it would just vanish without a trace." Kate leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I hate to even suggest this, but have you considered that someone might have deliberately taken it?" The direct question that Mrs. Henderson had only hinted at made Charlotte's heart race. I've tried not to think about that possibility because it seems so horrible. Who would steal something so personal and meaningful? Someone who values expensive jewelry more than personal feelings, Kate replied quietly. Charlotte studied Kate's expression, wondering if she was implying something specific. Do you have any particular reason to think someone in this household would do such a thing? Kate hesitated before answering. My mother has always had a strong interest in valuable jewelry and antiques. She spends a lot of time studying auction catalogs and visiting estate sales. When she saw your locket at breakfast that first morning, I noticed how carefully she examined it and asked about its value. The memory of that conversation came flooding back to Charlotte. Had indeed focused immediately on the locket's monetary worth rather than its sentimental significance. But surely she wouldn't steal from family. She's married to my father now. That's just it, Kate said uncomfortably. You're not really family to her yet. She's only been married to your father for a few weeks, and I know my mother well enough to recognize when she wants something badly. Charlotte felt sick to her stomach as the implications of Kate's words sank in. Are you saying you think your mother took my grandmother's locket? Kate looked miserable but determined to continue. I can't prove anything, but I think it's possible. She's been acting strangely since the locket disappeared, almost like she's relieved rather than sympathetic, and she keeps pushing you to accept replacement jewelry and stop searching. But where would she hide it? The staff has searched the entire house. Not her private rooms, Kate pointed out. She specifically requested that the staff not disturb her personal belongings during the search. She said she would check her own room herself. Charlotte's mind raced as she considered this new perspective. Many of recent behaviors suddenly seemed suspicious rather than merely insensitive. The quick dismissal of involving authorities, the pressure to stop searching, the eager offers of replacement jewelry, and most tellingly, the restriction on searching her private quarters. What should we do? Charlotte asked. I can't exactly accuse my father's new wife of theft without proof. Kate was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with loyalty to her mother versus what she believed was right. Maybe we could find a way to check her room when she's not there. If the locket is hidden somewhere in her belongings, at least we would know for certain. The idea of secretly searching's room felt wrong to Charlotte, but the thought of never seeing her grandmother's locket again felt worse. When would we have an opportunity? She spends a lot of time in her room, and the staff is always around during the day. Tomorrow evening, there's a dinner party in the village that she's been planning to attend. She'll be gone for several hours, and most of the staff will be busy with their evening duties. Charlotte felt torn between hope and guilt. I don't know if I can do something so sneaky. What if we're wrong and she's innocent? Then we'll know for certain that we need to look elsewhere, Kate replied. But what if we're right and the locket is sitting in her jewelry box while you suffer thinking it's lost forever? The possibility that her treasured locket might be within reach, hidden away by someone who had no right to it, made Charlotte's decision for her. You're right. If there's even a chance of getting it back, I have to try. They spent the rest of the afternoon planning their search strategy. Kate knew her mother's habits and could predict how long she would be away from the house. Charlotte's familiarity with the estate's layout would help them avoid the staff and move quickly through the search. As evening approached, Charlotte felt her nervous energy increasing. She barely touched her dinner and had to force herself to make normal conversation with, who seemed excited about her upcoming social engagement. Every time spoke about her plans for the evening, Charlotte felt guilty about their secret intention to search her room. I do hope you'll feel better soon, Charlotte, said as she prepared to leave. All this worry about material possessions is affecting your health. Perhaps while I'm out, you could try on that diamond necklace I offered you. It might help you realize that some changes can be positive. Charlotte managed a weak smile. Perhaps I will. After's carriage departed for the village, Charlotte and Kate waited another 30 minutes to ensure she was well away from the estate. The evening staff was busy with their routines in other parts of the house, and the timing seemed as perfect as they could hope for. Are you ready? Kate asked as they stood outside's bedroom door. Charlotte's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the door handle. Let's find out what's really happened to my grandmother's locket. The room beyond the door held secrets that would change everything Charlotte thought she knew about her new family situation, and the truth waiting to be discovered would prove more shocking than either young woman had imagined. Charlotte's hand froze on the door handle as the weight of what they were about to do hit her fully. Searching through private belongings felt like crossing a line she had never imagined crossing, but the desperate need to find her grandmother's locket overcame her hesitation. Kate stood beside her, equally nervous but determined to help uncover the truth. The bedroom door opened silently, revealing elegantly appointed private quarters. The room reflected her expensive tastes, with luxurious fabrics, antique furniture, and carefully arranged decorative objects that spoke of wealth and refinement. Heavy curtains blocked most of the evening light, leaving the room dimly lit by a single lamp had left burning. "We need to be systematic," Kate whispered, closing the door carefully behind them. "Mother is very organized, so if she's hiding something, it will be in a specific place." Charlotte nodded, her heart pounding as they began their search. They started with the obvious locations: the jewelry box on her vanity table, the drawers of her dressing table, and the wardrobe where her clothes hung in perfect order. Each open drawer revealed expensive jewelry, silk scarves, and designer accessories, but no sign of the missing locket. "Look at all this jewelry," Charlotte murmured as they examined the contents of main jewelry box. "She has dozens of pieces worth far more than my grandmother's locket." Kate's expression grew troubled as she recognized several items. "Some of these pieces are new. Mother didn't own this much expensive jewelry when we lived at our previous home. I remember her complaining about not having proper jewelry for social occasions." They continued searching through smaller boxes and hidden compartments within the furniture. Personal belongings revealed a woman obsessed with luxury and status, someone who collected beautiful objects with the same intensity others might collect books or artwork. Every piece of jewelry was carefully and stored, suggesting an almost compulsive need to possess and organize valuable items. "Here," Kate whispered urgently, pointing to a locked drawer in the bottom of secretary desk. "This drawer is different from the others. She keeps the key hidden behind this small painting." Kate moved a miniature portrait aside to reveal a tiny key attached to the back of the frame. Her familiarity with her mother's habits made Charlotte realize that Kate had suspected its true nature for much longer than she had admitted. The locked drawer opened to reveal a collection of items that made both young women gasp in shock. Inside were several pieces of jewelry that neither of them recognized, along with small valuable objects like gold coins, precious stones, and antique trinkets. Everything was carefully wrapped and labeled with notes describing their origins and estimated values. "Mother has been collecting these things since before she married your father," Kate said quietly, her voice filled with shame and realization. "I never understood where they all came from." Charlotte felt sick as she recognized the implications. These must be stolen from other households where she's been a guest or from previous relationships. At the very back of the drawer, wrapped in black velvet cloth, lay the object they had been searching for. Charlotte's hands trembled as she unwrapped the familiar silver locket, its Victorian engravings catching the lamplight exactly as they had when it rested against her heart. Inside, the tiny photograph of her great-grandmother gazed back at her, unchanged and undamaged. "She took it," Charlotte whispered, holding the locket against her chest as tears of relief and anger filled her eyes. "She actually stole my grandmother's locket." Kate's face was pale with embarrassment and fury. "I'm so sorry, Charlotte. I suspected she might have done this, but seeing the proof makes it real. She's been stealing from people for who knows how long." Charlotte fastened the locket around her neck with shaking hands, feeling whole again for the first time in days. But her relief was quickly replaced by anger and a determination to ensure faced consequences for her actions. "What should we do?" she asked. "We can't let her get away with this." "We need to tell your father immediately," Kate replied firmly. "And we need to document what we found here. These other items probably belong to other people who think they've simply misplaced valuable family heirlooms." They carefully photographed the contents of the drawer using Charlotte's small camera, making sure to capture the labels and organization that proved this was not a random collection, but a deliberate accumulation of stolen goods. Kate's hands shook as she helped document her mother's crimes, but she never wavered in her determination to do what was right. "I can't believe I've been living with a thief and never realized it," Kate said as they finished their documentation. She always had explanations for new jewelry or valuable items. She said they were gifts from grateful friends or good investments she had made. Charlotte felt sympathy for Kate's situation despite her own anger toward. You couldn't have known. She was very convincing, and you had no reason to suspect your own mother of criminal behavior. They carefully returned everything to its original position except for Charlotte's locket, which remained safely around her neck where it belonged. As they prepared to leave room, they heard the sound of carriage wheels on the gravel drive outside. "She's back early," Kate whispered in panic. "The dinner party wasn't supposed to end for another 2 hours." They quickly turned off the lamp and moved toward the door, but the sound of footsteps on the main staircase meant they wouldn't be able to leave the room without being seen. Charlotte's mind raced as she realized they were trapped in the bedroom with damning evidence of their discovery. "The balcony," Charlotte whispered, remembering that room had French doors leading to a small balcony that connected to the main staircase's exterior landing. They could potentially slip out through the garden and re-enter the house through a side entrance. But as they moved toward the balcony doors, they heard his voice in the hallway, much closer than they had expected. The door handle began to turn, and both young women realized they had run out of time and options. Entered her bedroom and immediately sensed something was wrong. The room felt different, and her predatory instincts, honed by years of deception, told her that someone had been in her private space. She turned on the main lighting and began a quick visual inspection of her belongings. "I know someone is in here," she called out calmly, her voice carrying a dangerous edge that neither Charlotte nor Kate had heard before. "You might as well come out and explain yourselves." Charlotte and Kate emerged from behind the heavy curtains near the balcony, knowing that hiding was pointless. Charlotte's hand instinctively moved to her locket, and eyes immediately focused on the movement with predatory intensity. "How interesting," said with a cold smile. "It appears the missing locket has mysteriously reappeared. What a remarkable coincidence." "There's nothing coincidental about it," Charlotte replied, finding courage in her righteous anger. "You stole it from me, and we found it hidden in your locked drawer along with all the other valuable items you've taken from people." His composure cracked slightly, but she quickly recovered her calculating demeanor. "Those are very serious accusations, Charlotte. I hope you have proof to support such claims." Kate stepped forward, her voice steady despite her obvious distress. "We have photographs of everything in your secret drawer, Mother. We've documented your entire collection of stolen goods." For the first time since they had known her, his mask of respectability completely fell away. Her expression became cold and calculating, revealing the true predatory nature that had been hidden beneath layers of charm and sophistication. "You foolish girls have no idea what you're interfering with," she said quietly. "Do you think this is some simple matter that can be resolved with accusations and photographs?" Charlotte felt a chill as she realized they might be in actual physical danger. His transformation from charming stepmother to cold criminal was complete, and there was no telling what lengths she might go to protect herself. "My father will be back tomorrow," Charlotte said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We've already prepared a full report of what we've discovered. There's no way you can cover this up." Laughed, a sound completely devoid of warmth or humor. "Your father is a romantic fool who sees only what he wants to see. He'll believe whatever explanation I give him, especially if the alternative is admitting he married a woman who has been systematically robbing his friends and neighbors." The confrontation that followed would determine not only the fate of Charlotte's precious locket, but the future of everyone involved in the web of deception that had woven around the Spencer family estate. The truth had finally been exposed, but the consequences of that exposure would prove more dangerous and far-reaching than anyone could have anticipated.